Welcome, my bountiful friends. It's time to put on some gloves over your coarse hands and buy some better shoes, because today we're going to be visiting a mad old lady in a creepy, decrepit mansion where time has stood still. We're going to be delving deep into a cornerstone of English literature, Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. A young boy must master his inner self to overcome his preconceptions about class and love. Will he finally learn where his bread is buttered, or will he keep chasing the girl designed to break his heart? What are this book's themes? What was its impact on literature, and how does it fare today? As usual, I'll be diving in deep, and as always, there'll be as many spoilers as there are broken hearts, and there'll be plenty of opinions, so you have been warned. And before we begin in earnest, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. Dickens began writing Great Expectations in late 1860, at a time when he was already a highly successful author, but when he was also facing personal and professional challenges. His previous novel, A Tale of Two Cities, had been serialised in his magazine All the Year Round, and he was searching for a new work that would captivate his readership. Originally, he had considered writing Great Expectations as a shorter piece, but as he developed the story, it expanded into a full-length novel. The novel draws inspiration from Dickens' own life experiences, including his difficult childhood, his early ambitions, and his later disillusionment with societal expectations. The themes, like the majority of his works, focused on social mobility, wealth, and personal growth, which are central to the narrative, reflecting his ongoing concerns about class disparities and the moral integrity of Victorian England. When first published in All the Year Round, its serialisation ran from December 1860 to August 1861, with new instalments appearing weekly. This method of publication allowed Dickens to engage his audience with cliffhangers and build anticipation for each new chapter, a strategy he had successfully used in previous works like Oliver Twist and David Copperfield. Interestingly, he initially planned for the novel to have a darker ending, where Pip and Estella remained separated. However, after receiving feedback from his friend and fellow novelist Edward Bulwer Lytton, he revised the endings to suggest a more hopeful future for characters. This decision will remain one of the most debated aspects about the book. After its serialisation, it was published as a 3-volume book by Chapman and Hall in October 1861. The novel was an instant success, receiving critical acclaim and widespread popularity. Many readers appreciated its intricate plot and well-developed characters, and it quickly solidified its place in the literary canon. Pip, aka Philip Pirrip, is the protagonist and narrator of the novel. He is an orphan raised by his strict sister and her kind husband, Joe Gargery. Pip dreams of rising above his humble beginnings and is granted the opportunity when he receives financial support from a mysterious benefactor. Over time, he matures, learns hard lessons about class and morality, and ultimately reconciles with his past. Estella Havisham is Pip's love interest and the ward of Miss Havisham. She is raised to break men's hearts, and she initially treats Pip coldly. She later marries an abusive husband, Bentley Drummle, and suffers through an unhappy marriage. By the novel's end, she has changed significantly. Miss Havisham is a wealthy, eccentric woman who was betrayed by her fiancé and has lived in bitterness ever since. She royally messes up her ward Estella psychologically. Eventually she realises the harm she has caused and begs Pip's forgiveness. Tragically, or maybe not, depending on your view, her decaying mansion burns down and she later dies from her injuries. Abel Magwitch is a convict who secretly becomes Pip's benefactor. Pip initially fears Magwitch, whom he meets as a child in a graveyard. Later, Magwitch reveals he funded Pip's gentlemanly education as gratitude for a childhood kindness. Despite all his good actions, his ending is genuinely tragic. Joe Gargery is Pip's kind-hearted brother-in-law and a blacksmith. Joe is one of the few truly good characters in Pip's life, always remaining loyal despite Pip's dismissiveness when he becomes a gentleman. After Pip's downfall, Joe nurses him back to health and marries Biddy, finally finding happiness. Biddy is Pip's childhood friend and the eventual wife of Joe. She is a kind and intelligent woman, and she cares for Pip but knows he is too focused on Estella to appreciate her. By the novel's end, she marries Joe and helps raise their child. Herbert Pocket is Pip's close friend in London. Herbert helps Pip navigate his new life and remains one of his most loyal companions. With Pip's assistance, Herbert secures a stable future. Jaggers is a powerful and intimidating lawyer who oversees Pip's inheritance. He is deeply involved in many characters' fates but remains emotionally detached. Though he influences Pip's rise, he keeps secrets, including Estella's true parentage. Bentley Drummle is a cruel, arrogant rival to Pip. He marries Estella and mistreats her. His abusive nature eventually leads to his death, reportedly from mistreating a horse, which sounds most dodgy. The novel opens in a graveyard on the marshes of Kent, where young Pip, an orphan, encounters an escaped convict, Abel Magwitch. Terrified, Pip agrees to bring him food and a file to remove his chains. Shortly after, Magwitch is caught, but protects Pip by claiming he stole nothing. Pip lives with his abusive sister and her kind husband, Joe, a blacksmith. One day, Pip is invited to visit Miss Havisham, a wealthy but batty old lady who lives in the decaying Satis house. She was abandoned on her wedding day and has since remained dressed in her ruined bridal gown, surrounded by remnants of that fateful day. So there are a few red flags there. At Satis house, Pip meets Estella, Miss Havisham's beautiful but cruel ward. He falls in love with her despite her disdain, and Miss Havisham encourages this, raising Estella to be emotionally detached as revenge against all men. Pip dreams of becoming a gentleman to win Estella's affection. Meanwhile, Mrs. Joe is attacked by an unknown assailant and left incapacitated. Biddy, a kind and intelligent girl, cares for her. Pip begins to notice Biddy's goodness, but remains fixated on Estella. One day, Jaggers, a powerful lawyer, informs Pip that he has come into a great fortune from an anonymous benefactor. Pip assumes that Miss Havisham has given him the money and intends for him to marry Estella. He moves to London and lives beyond his means, befriending Herbert Pocket, who helps him adapt to upper-class life. Over time, Pip loses touch with Joe and Biddy, believing himself too refined for them, the knob. He also learns more about Miss Havisham's cruel upbringing of Estella. Estella warns Pip herself that she has no heart and cannot love. Pip's illusions are shattered when Magwitch reappears in London, revealing that he is Pip's true benefactor. As a young man, Magwitch was betrayed by Compeyson, a gentleman criminal, and sentenced harshly due to his lower class status. Escaping Australia, he has risked his life to see Pip. Pip is horrified by the revelation, but gradually comes to respect Magwitch. He plans to help him escape England before he is caught. Meanwhile, Estella marries Bentley Drummle, a boorish and cruel man. Miss Havisham, realizing she has warped Estella's life, asks Pip for forgiveness. Shortly after, she is severely burned when her bridal gown catches fire. She later dies from her injuries. Pip and Herbert attempt to smuggle Magwitch out of England, but the plan fails. Compeyson tips off the authorities, leading to a boat chase where Compeyson drowns. Hurrah! Magwitch is captured and sentenced to death. Boo! As he lies dying in prison, Pip tells him that his lost daughter, Estella, is alive, unknowingly giving Magwitch his only moment of joy. Blimey. After losing his fortune, Pip falls ill. Joe nurses him back to health, forgiving him for his past arrogance. Pip returns home, hoping to marry Biddy, but finds that she has already wed Joe. Though saddened, he finally recognises their kindness. Years later, Pip meets Estella in the ruins of Satis house. She has endured hardships and softened. Perhaps there's a chance for them after all. Dickens employs a first-person narrative, which is quite a common device for 19th century literature. It permits us an intimate look into Pip's thoughts and emotions. The retrospective nature of the narration allows for reflection as he recounts his journey with an awareness of his youthful follies and moral growth. This perspective enhances the novel's psychological depth, inviting readers to witness Pip's evolving self-awareness. The language Dickens uses is expressive yet accessible, blending vivid imagery with sharp social observation. His descriptions are often dramatic, heightening moments of tension and melancholy. When Pip first meets Magwitch in the graveyard, Dickens paints a scene of desolation with phrases like "the distant savage lair from which the wind was rushing," a haunting reference of setting to reflect Pip's fear. The dialogue is crafted with distinct voices for each character. Jaggers speaks in precise, commanding tones, while Joe's speech is warm and colloquial, reinforcing his honest nature. Estella's clipped and detached manner further accentuates her emotional restraint. This careful distinction in voice underscores character, relationships, and societal divisions. Symbolism is woven throughout, reinforcing the novel's dramatic atmosphere. Miss Havisham's decaying wedding dress and rotting cake symbolise her stagnation and heartbreak, while Pip's expectations and their eventual collapse are mirrored in the gradual unravelling of illusions around wealth and status. Dickens also employs irony to great effect. Pip initially believes Miss Havisham his benefactor, but reality proves otherwise. His assumptions and aspirations are constantly and consistently challenged, lending the novel a layer of dramatic irony, where the reader often perceives Pip's misjudgments before he does. The atmosphere shifts throughout, adapting to Pip's circumstances. The opening scenes in the Kent marshes are imbued with bleakness and suspense. The landscape is a dark, flat wilderness, a reflection of Pip's isolation and the danger posed by Magwitch. The misty surroundings also serve as an ominous prelude to Pip's future uncertainties. Satis House introduces a gothic element to the novel's tone. It is frozen in time, covered in dust and decay. The atmosphere here is one of eerie stagnation, as Miss Havisham exists in perpetual mourning. Pip's visits to this mansion are tinged with unease, setting the stage for his distorted perceptions of love and ambition. London, in contrast, is bustling and harsh. Pip initially revels in its sophistication, yet as his financial troubles mount, the city's grandeur fades. The atmosphere becomes oppressive, mirroring his growing disillusionment. Dickens often describes the streets as grimy and overwhelming, reflecting the moral complexities Pip faces. Moments of tenderness provide respite from the novel's darker tones. Joe's forge exudes warmth and simplicity, contrasting sharply with the coldness of London society. The final meeting between Pip and Estella carries a subdued, melancholic atmosphere, as time has softened both their characters. Dickens' ability to manipulate atmosphere ensures Great Expectations remains immersive. Whether through foreboding landscapes, intimate interior spaces, or crowded city streets, the novel's tone shifts to reflect Pip's journey, making it a masterclass in literary style. Great Expectations is of course rich with themes, as all Dickens novels are, but preeminent of all the themes is probably social class and mobility. It's one of the novel's defining themes, and the rigid social hierarchy of Victorian England is pivotal to the story. Pip's journey is driven by his desire to transcend his lower class upbringing. Initially, he believes that wealth and status will bring him happiness and respect. As a child, he feels ashamed of his origins, especially in contrast to Estella, who constantly reminds him of his coarse hands and boots. When Jaggers informs him of his newfound fortune, Pip makes an incorrect assumption about where that money's come from. This misconception highlights his blind belief in social mobility as a path to fulfillment. Dickens dismantles this idea. Pip's experience as a gentleman proves hollow. He accumulates debt, mistreats those who genuinely care for him, and becomes emotionally lost. Meanwhile, figures like Joe and Biddy, who remain true to their roots, embody genuine integrity. Bentley Drummle, a wealthy aristocrat, is a brute, demonstrating that class alone does not equate to good character or moral superiority. By the novel's end, Pip sees that nobility is defined by spiritual character rather than material wealth. His rejection of superficial status in favour of humility underscores Dickens' critique of societal divisions. Closely related to the first theme is ambition and self-improvement. Pip's aspirations shape the novel's plot. His childhood is marked by dreams of rising above his circumstances, primarily to impress others. He is devastated when he learns that his expectations have been funded not by Miss Havisham, but by Magwitch, a convict. This revelation forces Pip to re-evaluate his own values. Initially, he is horrified, associating Magwitch with the shame he once felt as a boy. Yet as he matures, he recognises Magwitch's kindness and loyalty. In contrast to the gentleman Pip once admired, Magwitch proves himself through action rather than social status. Pip's ambition eventually leads to self-reflection. He abandons his reckless spending and grows to appreciate the people he once overlooked. His redemption comes through humility. He seeks forgiveness from Joe and Biddy and embraces a simpler life. Dickens suggests that ambition must be tempered with integrity, and that personal growth is most valuable when it fosters genuine relationships. Love and rejection. Love, often warped or unfulfilled, plays a crucial role in the novel. Pip's love for Estella is obsessive and unrealistic. He idolises her despite her obvious cruelty and lack of character. Estella, raised to reject affection, is emotionally vacant, an empty shell who has been hollowed out by a vengeful Miss Havisham. The unpleasant old biddy is literally decaying in all senses, stuck in the past by heartbreak, unable to move on. She realises late in the day that in her pursuit to wreak revenge on men, she has actually severely damaged a fellow sister, who must now also undergo a seemingly loveless life. Pip, for his part, experiences rejection in a different form. His dismissal of Jo and Biddy comes from shame rather than malice. When he later returns, hoping to marry Biddy, he finds that he has missed his opportunity. This final rejection serves as a lesson. Love cannot be soothed through entitlement or expectation. The final theme is crime and justice. Magwitch's story highlights the novel's commentary on justice. His life has been shaped by the brutal realities of class-based discrimination. As a young man, he was judged harshly by the courts, while his accomplice, Compeyson, a refined gentleman, received leniency. Dickens critiques a system that punishes individuals unevenly for the same crime based on who they are. Magwitch's arc also challenges Pip's assumptions. Initially, Pip sees him as a threat, but by the end he recognises him as a man who has suffered unfairly. Pip's final moments with Magwitch, telling him that his lost daughter is alive, brings Magwitch peace, reinforcing the idea that justice is often achieved outside of legal boundaries. Upon its initial serialisation in 1860, Great Expectations was met with enthusiasm from both critics and readers alike. Everyone seemingly enjoying Pip's dramatic journey from naive youth to humbled adult. The thrilling structure, combined with Dickens's masterful use of suspense in weekly instalments, kept audiences captivated. Critics in the Victorian era noted his refined storytelling in this particular novel, comparing it more favourably to his earlier works. While novels like David Copperfield shared autobiographical elements, Great Expectations was seen as more psychologically complex, particularly in its exploration of class, ambition, and self-deception. But as often is the case, not everyone was entirely satisfied. Some critics expressed disappointment that it was not more socially radical as some of his previous works, such as Bleak House or Hard Times, which directly address brutal systemic injustice. Others questioned the novel's moral resolution, especially Pip's final meeting with Estella, which, as mentioned before, Dickens actually had changed from his original intentions. Despite these criticisms, it quickly became a commercial success, as its serialised nature in a magazine had made it widely accessible. By the time it was published in book form in 1861, it had already cemented its place in literary history. By the early 20th century, the rise of literary analysis as an academic discipline led critics to examine Pip's transformation as an intricate study of identity and morality. The novel gained favour among modernist writers who admired its introspective qualities. Writers such as George Bernard Shaw praised its realism and nuanced characters, though he famously preferred Dickens's original darker ending to the more optimistic revision. Following World War II, the book underwent another critical re-evaluation. It was appreciated for its critique of Victorian social structures, particularly the portrayal of class mobility. It also became a frequent subject in psychological studies, with Miss Havisham's obsession and Estella's emotional repression analysed in the context of trauma and manipulation. Critics increasingly explored Dickens's ability to blend Gothic elements with social realism. Film adaptations in the mid-20th century, such as David Lean's celebrated 1946 version, helped popularise the novel further. These cinematic retellings introduced Great Expectations to a broader audience still, reinforcing its status as one of Dickens' most visually and thematically striking works. Today, the novel remains one of the most studied and adapted works in English literature. Its enduring themes of ambition, redemption, and self-discovery ensure its continued relevance. The novel has inspired numerous adaptations across different media, films, stage productions, and television series, all exploring its emotional complexity. In fact, the novel has assumed a position in the common cultural consciousness, with most native English speakers being roughly aware of the novel, its characters, and its story, without necessarily having directly engaged with it themselves. This also results in it being referenced in common culture, such as South Park's usage of Pip as a recurring character, and many a comedic impression of Miss Havisham's cruel character. From its initial success to its continued impact, it has endured as one of Dickens' most remarkable works. Whether examined through historical, literary, or cultural lenses, its rich character development and masterful narrative ensures its place as a cornerstone of English literature. Dickens' books are generally a rare oddity. His particular writing style was so on point that it stands up to date without bamboozling or boring the reader with outdated, verbose jargon, which is often the case with Victorian-era literature. And with being a progressive sort of chap, who was earnestly trying to address the wrongs of his day, we are also spared any awkward, antiquated racism or sexism, which again haunts many a page in peer books of the time, although I'm not really sure I could say this about Oliver Twist. All the themes still hold up too. In fact, Pip's character arc and inner journey is eternal. We will always have to learn the lesson that one should value those people around us who offer us care and support, and not chase after people just because they're rich, good-looking, or famous. Great Expectations is a lesson in being true to oneself and to others and keeping it real. And all moralising aside, the characters are interesting. They say engaging things that cause the reader to engage their brain, and the atmosphere is rich enough to live in. A good Dickens novel ticks all the boxes and is a pleasure to read. And if you've not read this novel, then you can have great expectations about reading Great Expectations. So what are your thoughts on this thought-provoking and moral novel? Which character did you find the most engaging, and which scene spoke to you? Once more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more deep dives into the world of literature. Until next time, keep reading, and remember, if some mad old lady dressed in a wedding dress invites you into her decrepit old mansion, then it's probably best to politely decline and concentrate on sorting out your coarse hands and getting yourself some nice shoes. Sir, madam, I shall now take my leave of you, and I bid you good day.